Hey everybody, welcome back to Front Page Fitness. It is me, Eric Trexler, joined as always by the Dr. Lauren Colenso Semple. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I had a huge win this week. Huge. I am a regular wordler. Are you a wordler?
No.
I didn't think so. Well, I've been wordling for a couple years, and as every good wordler knows, you need a solid first word. So it should have commonly used letters, and shouldn't lock you in. Like you'd never end with an S or something like that. So people often use a do to get all the vowels in they can get possible, but I use the word haste and been using haste for years. And I've always said one day the word will be haste and I will get it on my first try. And that happened this week.
Okay, so is this a safe space where I can bring you down from this high, or would you prefer that I just validate your feelings?
Fine. What?
It seems to me that the way you framed this was a pure statistical inevitability. And so I'm struggling to see kind of the kind of big payoff other than like eventually this will occur. I don't know. I don't want to totally take the wind out of your sails, but I'm of the fringe where I believe that getting it on the second try is almost in some ways more impressive than getting it on the first, because you've pivoted with a little bit of information and then nailed it.
That's true, but I've been doing it for so long that I very often get it on the second try. So that doesn't feel like a huge win.
Wow.
And
Now that's very impressive, because you came in feeling you were, riding high. I tried to chop you down, and then you counter with a very subtle flex of, yes, the more impressive thing, I do that so often it's not impressive. So or it's no longer special to you because you excel so regularly. So honestly, major tip of the cap to you, not just for getting on the first try, but more importantly for dueling me as I tried to take the wind out of your sails and really besting me.
thank you. Yeah, I feel like my puzzle game, I've stepped it up. I used to just be like a Monday New York Times crossworder, and now I'll go through to Thursday. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So they do it daily.
Yeah, and it gets harder every day.
Oh,
So
wow.
Monday is the easiest puzzle.
Okay. And do you also do the crossword of the New York Post?
I don't believe the New York Post offers a crossword, but I will definitely have to look into that.
Well, here's a good topical question for our podcast. What do you think the words would be like if they did one? It would have to be, everything would be like related to farts and different like wellness hacks.
And probably some of the words would be spelled wrong on the back end.
That is probably true. Yeah. It'd be like, but one time my wife really likes puzzles. I don't. I hate puzzles. Because when someone puts a puzzle on a desk and says, this is your problem now, I feel like now I have a thing in my life that needs to be resolved, and that stands between me and peace. Like I can't rest until that's just the way my brain works. Like I one time started a project in my house, removing a wooden structure, and I thought it was going to be very quick, but I didn't quite have the right tools for it. And I basically turned into a caveman and was just hacking this thing apart, and was up until like 2 a.m. doing it because I was like, I can't rest until this is done. So something's wrong with my brain where that happens. And basically, when I start a puzzle, I begin being stressed, and I will be stressed until it is resolved. However, my wife loves them, but one time she did a puzzle, got to the end of it, and realized there was not the final piece. It was just gone. And I feel like that would be the similar effect of like trying to do a crossword, failing and failing and failing. I can't get this last word, and then you realize they spelled it wrong. It'd be the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I sadly have encountered the missing puzzle piece on more than one occasion, sometimes with very large puzzles. And that is because when the dogs were little, they thought it was really fun to either chew on them or hide them under the couch. It's not cool.
Yeah, yeah. So my wife, I tried to, like with you, I'm happy to always cut you down when you're feeling good. With her, I try to
Try to
be
be
more
slightly more supportive,
more
just a
supportive,
tad.
more accommodating. So, she finishes this puzzle. There's the one missing piece, and it seemed like there was this kind of anticlimactic, like, oh, well, it's not done. I'm like, yeah, but you see where this was going, right? Like you got the thing, right? Like whether or not that final piece is produced, you've solved the puzzle, right? Now it's just a matter of formality of putting the final piece in. So I took a very different approach and said, well, you did it, right? You solved it, you win. But yeah, it's certainly not quite as satisfying. But
Definitely not.
all right, Lauren, should we dive into the hard-hitting fitness topics of the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the first thing we have here is called the Shape Me bike. And so I am going to I'm going to throw that up on the screen here momentarily. Just got to get the audio all set up. Here we go. Thank you for your patience, everyone. This is a high quality podcasting experience with videos and audio. So here we go.
Doesn't just move, you move it. The Shape Me bike from Poland works with your upper body instead of pedals. You rock back and forth to drive the wheel both ways, giving you a full-body workout while you ride. This bike doesn't just move.
All right. So, Lauren, the good viewers on YouTube just saw that. The listeners on podcast at least heard the description, but we are talking about a bike, which is called the Shape Me bike. And this is not your average bike, not your grandmother's bike, because this one has literally no pedals. There's handlebars like normal. And how would you describe the motion required to make this thing work?
It's a seated gyrating motion.
Well, it's
More like a sit to stand with a thrust.
Yeah, a sit to stand with a good hip thrust. Hip thrusting is certainly the singular. If you had to use a single kind of phrase for it, this is a hip thrust bike. And I think, one of the questions that comes to me is, well, why, Lauren, when we had bicycles that seem to be doing okay?
So when I first came across this, I thought it was a joke. It's not a joke. This is a real product. And the marketing behind it is such that basically a traditional bike is trash for exercise. And so we needed to turn it into a full body workout. And now you can work all of these upper body and core muscles because of this, revolutionary bike.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where you feel like you got a good idea, and then the nerds come in, those idiot nerds who ruin everything and remind you that gravity exists and force vectors are real. And so even though you are doing a thrusting motion, regrettably, you are not doing that thrusting motion against any type of opposing force. So I understand that they would love for the consumer to believe, oh, hip thrust, that'll really shape my glutes. I'm afraid not, folks. You got to actually be thrusting against something in terms of resistance.
And because there are no pedals, it took all of the other, traditional leg action that is cycling just completely out of the equation. So It's not even really a bike anymore in that sense. It's just wild to me that someone thought, cycling really, really needs to be reinvented in a quote unquote full body way. And this is the prototype they ended up with.
There really is an epidemic of messing around with ambulatory vehicles. I don't know if that's the correct term, but all these different wheeled vehicles that are supposed to get you around. At first there was the bicycle, and that was good. Then there was the unicycle, and I said, okay, this is a novelty product. It's zany. I like that.
It's definitely harder.
Of course, yes. I still really fundamentally don't understand how it works. Like, I don't understand. There must be some just absolutely mesmerizing mechanics in terms of how the chain and pedals actually function. I've never actually sat down to kind of work through how you get that thing to move forward in a meaningful way. But I'm sure someone is going to Google that and then dunk on me in the comments. That's fine. That's the price that I pay. That's what I signed up for. But then they started saying okay, now we're going to do recumbent bikes. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, because I'm sure for some people with a variety of contexts, that's, a little bit, better for accessibility. Some people who can't ride a traditional bike may find a recumbent bike more suitable. I'm on board with that. But then, like, I feel like I've seen so many bike gadgets that are like, oh, this is like an elliptical turned into a bike. Or now we've got this kind of hip thrusty, weird looking bike. I think we need to just put a moratorium and say, listen, if you are an entertainer, you can make the unicycle work. I will allow it. For exercise or as a mode of transportation, I will permit the regular bicycle. I'll give you the recumbent bicycle, and because I feel generous, I will also throw in the old-timey circus tricycle with a giant front wheel. But beyond that, I think we really need to put a moratorium on the innovation in the space.
I will also allow the group cycling activity that is typically an excuse just to drink. I usually have it in like Savannah and Charleston.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Although, I think we might want to get... Have you been near one of those recently?
I've never been on one. I've just witnessed it from the street.
Yeah, so you gotta really be in a good mood to witness that from the street and not be like, okay, we also need a moratorium on these. I went to, I had a buddy got married in Nashville, which, unbeknownst to me, is the bachelorette party capital of the world. And actually, they don't have cars there anymore. The only thing on the streets in Nashville are just those giant drinking pedal, whatever you call them, bachelorette party vehicles. And there was, of course, on the vehicle, there's a high level of very condensed enthusiasm. And so you really got to be in the right mood. By the time the 30th one comes along with the blaring music and the woos and the yelling, and it does get flashing lights. Yeah, it loses its charm around 26. Once you get to the 27th and the 28th and the 29th comes around the corner, you say, okay, we need to diversify in the city.
Right. Maybe that needs an innovation.
Maybe all they have to do to innovate to make the people a little bit less cheery and a little less boisterous is let's actually hook up the pedals this time. You have to really move this thing, because I don't want to spoil the surprise, but that's just a dude driving that thing around. I hate to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think
pedaling is optional.
Yeah, I think if we saw people on there who were actually, near their lactate threshold, feeling a little bit nauseous, then I think it would kind of solve all the problems that we're talking about.
There would be a lot less wooing, I imagine.
Very much a reduction in woos. But you know what? Let the young people have fun. That's what I say, as long as I'm not involved. All right. I am a little concerned about this next one because all it says here is rib removal. So the headline, as I see it from the New York Post, of course, renowned for their crossword puzzles, young women are dropping thousands on gruesome rib removal surgery as dangerous Ozempic body trend takes hold. Hold on 1 second, Lauren. Okay, there is an M dash in this headline. Everything that we had before that dash. Young women are dropping thousands on gruesome rib removal surgery. That sounds headline worthy. I'm on board. How are they roping Ozempic into this? What is happening? Is there like a small group of like SEO consultants who are just saying you have to put Ozempic in every headline?
Like, if there's any possible way to tie this in there, so any kind of weight loss, health, diet, body transformation, we're throwing Ozempic.
Oh my God. I'm going to hand the mic over in a second, but like if people are watching on YouTube, my facial expression was genuine shock that you just observed while Lauren was talking. I am really grossed out because this article actually shows a woman holding a bag with her rib bones in it.
Yeah.
It says James kept her removed ribs for posterity, and she is just holding a medical plastic bag with her ribs in it. This is absolutely gruesome, Lauren. And now I yield the remainder of my time so I can become even more disappointed.
Yeah, this is a rough one. And they interviewed a few people who have actually undergone the surgery. They do have some fairly graphic images in the article. And I mean, it is what it sounds like. People are getting ribs removed so that they have a smaller waist. And apparently the recovery from this surgery is like 7 months and extremely painful. And of course, one might wonder, why do I have ribs? What function do they serve? Why might I not want to surgically remove them for aesthetic purposes? And there are some warnings in there, like, hey, we have these vital organs that need protection. And when we just start removing the ribs, then that's not so good for protection of some organs. And you also have some really gnarly scars from this surgery. I don't know if you clocked those.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to do this, you might as well plan on investing in the whole back tattoo piece to kind of
Yeah.
work that into it aesthetically. Yeah, this is, man, do you know how many they're willing? I actually like, this is crazy that this came up on the show because I just saw an interview as I was like scrolling through Instagram where somebody was actually had done this and they were talking about how their idiot loser, overly conservative doctor wouldn't remove as many as they wanted. And they were trying to remove like a whole a whole stack of ribs from both sides. Do you know how many is it normally like the bottom two that they're taking out here?
I think that some will take out as many as four, but the conservative approach is just two.
Oh, oh my gosh, this is grisly stuff. And I think probably the final question that really needs to be asked here is for who is encouraging this? Like this is just such an obscene thing, and I feel like I don't know. I there are very few people that I would look at them and I say like, you know what would really make them look more attractive? Fewer ribs. They have a rib problem.
Well, and you see, like one of these people who they interviewed was, preparing for her wedding, and so this was part of like the beauty regimen that she was engaging in old school. It would be like, oh, you're going on your wedding diet, or you're gonna do a bunch of fitness classes, and maybe you're gonna get a self tanner. But now we're getting some serious surgery.
Yeah.
Surgery.
I don't know. Part of the thing that disconnects me from reality, I've lived my life in a little bubble of my own creation. But yeah, that was not my wedding experience. My proposal period or engagement period was, I believe, 6 days. It might have been 7, but basically, my current wife and I, who was then my girlfriend, I said, I'd really like it if you married me. And she said, I would like that. And so then 6 days later, we were married. So what was nice about that, Lauren, was we didn't have the opportunity to decide to butcher our bodies or put ourselves through extremely restrictive practices or, take out 6-figure loans to plan the party of the century. We just went down to the courthouse and found 2 random people who were willing to say they were there. And it worked out pretty well. And the one thing that I'm really proud of, the 2 things I'm really proud of, right now, I have exactly as many teeth as I want and the same number of ribs I was born with. And I feel like those 2 things, I want to keep those going as long as I can.
So maybe we'll just stick with a regular bike and leave it alone, and stick with a normal number of ribs and leave those alone as well. Just
Yeah.
general policy.
Yeah. I mean, you start looking at what's under the ribs, a lot of important stuff there. So we'll just leave them, it just, man, this is one that really caught me off guard. But is it literally as simple as, Lauren, some people reduce their waist circumference via Ozempic and therefore we're going to throw it in the headline?
Yeah, I was gonna say like justice for Ozempic on this one because this is not comparable. This is people spending like upwards of 20 grand to go through a very, very extreme, risky, elective surgery with extensive recovery time that long term may not be such a great idea. And then we're going to be like, this is the same as using a FDA approved drug monitored by your doctor.
Completely. Yeah. Completely approved medication with a known risk profile. Yeah. No, I will say this though. It says here, credit to the good people at the New York Post. It says, after going under the knife to shrink her waistline from 32 inches to 24 inches, the influencer told the Post she had nothing but regret over her decision. She says, I don't recommend rib removal surgery to anyone. And she said, there are no longer ribs protecting my liver and kidneys, which could be a problem if I'm ever in a bad accident or experience an extreme impact. So, the thing that really shocks me is, so hear me out, Lauren. I'm not making a light of it, but she has decided in hindsight that now it was not worth it. But her explanation of that seems to be based purely on information that she absolutely should have had going into it, right? Like, I feel like if they didn't tell her, by the way, ribs have a purpose and now you have more vulnerable liver and kidneys, I feel like we're talking about medical malpractice here if that was not part of the sign-up form.
Yeah, and I have to wonder if this is one of those surgeries that many doctors refuse to do because that is a thing.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure a tremendous number of doctors, you go in and say, hey, I'd like you to remove my ribs. And they say, excuse me? And then you leave.
It's funny because I remember when we were younger, there was this whole article about what Barbie, like how it was unrealistic beauty standards for women and girls, and what Barbie would look like in real life if those proportions were kind of mapped out to it. And it was like she would be, 7 feet tall, and you would have to remove many ribs to get a waist of that size, and she actually wouldn't be able to stand up, and just a completely, and so it's like, and at the time that was something that people talked about, and in the context of, hey, we should probably make some more realistic dolls for our kids to play with. And now it's like, no, dude, you should cut into yourself to make you look like that.
Yeah, grow up. Yeah, life's tough. Now, I wrote a report in undergrad about there's some interesting research both on what you're talking about with the like the Barbie doll dimensions, but also with the action figure dimensions, and comparing those to like totally like the elite bodybuilders of any era taking any steroid accessible. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting sociological research on some of the psychological ramifications of kids growing up with these types of unrealistic figures that they use on a daily basis. But this part, Lauren, to wrap up here, is really just, this is something I'd never even considered, and now I just feel sad and bad. But it says, here's a quote from someone who did it. This is a different person who appears not to be so regretful of it. She says, my new waistline makes me feel sexier. I'm excited to see my wedding pictures and not feel the need to Photoshop them. Is there a meaningful number of people who are actually Photoshopping their pictures?
Yes. Where are you living?
Like not influencers, but just like everyday people Photoshopping?
It's easier than that because you can download these apps, and then you take a picture, you upload your picture to the app, and you can select buttons like longer hair, big lips, smoother skin, and you can like filter yourself and get lip injections and larger eyes and eyeliner, and like you can essentially, like, it's photoshopping for people who don't know how to use Photoshop.
Okay, I was gonna say, because Photoshop to me implies a level of intentionality and also just like skill acquisition where I'm like, this is too much.
Okay.
So with those filters, can you change your body dimensions? Can you,
Yeah, you can give yourself a bigger butt and a smaller waist. And
what the hell, Lauren? I've had people bullying me on the internet for a year about how fat I am, and you didn't decide to put me on this stuff and let me know about it? I could have avoided all of this harassment, all of this shame I bring with me.
Until you see somebody in real life and you're like, whoa, you don't look like that at all.
No, then I'll just say I'm currently experiencing an allergic reaction. I expect to be back to normal shortly.
Yeah, this goes a step further in the, cosmetic procedure world, because people do think the pictures people put out on social media are so real that then they go to their doctor or their dermatologist or whatever, and they're like, what can you do to give me skin like that? And the answer is nobody has skin like that.
Yeah. Man, what a tough world to live in. What do you say we start over, Lauren?
Just no more phones?
Uh, no more images for sure. Image,
Okay,
a complete and total ban on it. The only images that are allowed are you know those old timey like movies and shows where they like turn on the camera for one picture and there's like an actual like small explosion and the sparks fly everywhere and you get the like black and white image. We can go back to that. That was good for documentation purposes. We can get a good portrait.
Or we need to revert back to a time where cameras weren't as good. Because, when we used to take even early cell phone cameras or old school digital cameras, there was already a filter because the quality of the camera wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to worry about it. It was like a natural blur.
I do remember going through that a little bit when they started to get really serious about television cameras and high definition TVs, like the actual television sets themselves, where all of a sudden people who were like news anchors were like, whoa, now I need to I need to do something about this. Because all the people there like they were getting by on the low def television and then the high def, it was like, ooh, I need to rethink how we're doing the makeup in the room here.
That's right. Like we're seeing every pore now.
Yeah. All right. So let's move forward here. We've got a weight loss craze. Lord knows we needed one. We've been short of those. So this one is from the New York Post. Olive oil shots. Olive oil shots are the latest weight loss craze, but they may be more hype than medicine. Ooh, that's an interesting perspective, Lauren. So people are taking shots of olive oil, and this is purportedly to help them lose weight.
They totally missed the opportunity to mention Ozempic in this headline.
Yeah. Some say olive oil is the next Ozempic. Are they right? Time will tell.
I mean, just come on. It was such an obvious moment for you guys in your post. Yeah, so people are doing this on Instagram and TikTok, and I thought people were doing it more for, quote unquote health reasons. But I hadn't heard about it as a weight loss hack. But people say it blunts their appetite, and so despite eating the exact same calories and macros, she's losing weight. Doesn't make a lot of sense because blunting appetite might imply that therefore one is eating fewer calories, but that the person in this particular article swears that's not the case. I would caution against this because it's gross. And olive oil is good, but we don't need to be shooting it.
Yeah.
Like a drizzle is good, an olive oil based dressing I'm here for. Maybe a drizzle on a crostini, but a shot, that's a lot of olive oil.
Yeah. I'm thinking, are we going to say that a shot is what, 1.5 fluid ounces?
Yeah.
So I think we're talking about 180 calories there, which is going to be probably the least enjoyable 180 calories you're ever going to spend, if we're being honest. Now I'm with you, Lauren. I love olive oil, and this actually took me back to there was a brief period of time there, Lauren, where I was on a ketogenic diet. I was very curious about it. I study metabolism. I figured why not give it a shot, and at the time, I was dating someone who had all sorts of dietary sensitivities, and they just kind of gravitated toward a ketogenic diet. They probably didn't need to, as I've learned more about nutrition, but hey, it's what they did. So you know how it is. It's easy. It's much easier if the person you're dating and having a lot of meals with, if they're on a ketogenic diet, it's kind of easier for you to also be on one. So I gave it a shot, and it was interesting, and there were things I liked about it, things I didn't like about it. And I remember just falling in love with olive oil. It's wonderful. A lot of olive oil and beef. But yeah, the thing I also learned on the ketogenic diet is when you reach a critical tipping point where you have too much fat or oil per unit of other stuff, it becomes very disgusting. And so the idea of taking a shot of any oil, even olive oil, which I love, it is truly a disturbing thought in terms of the mouthfeel, the texture as you're swallowing it, the heaviness of it. And at the end of the day, folks, I mean this in the most loving way possible. There may be things out there that will be the latest weight loss craze, but I don't believe it's going to be just immediately swallowing 200 calories worth of fat. I do not think that is in any way going to be the next thing that's really going to move the needle. Maybe something else will do it, but I don't think it's that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. But seriously, honestly, looking at the images in the article actually made me realize I haven't had olive oil in a while, and I just remembered the flavor, and it's so good. It is such a delightful flavor. So I might have to have something with olive oil very soon. Let's see, Lauren, we got something on fart research, of course, coming from the New York Post, which is validates my prior statement that if they had a crossword puzzle, most of it would probably be related to farts or poop or Ozempic. But this one is, oh boy, this is going to be controversial. The headline is Women's Farts Smell Worse Than Men's, and there's science to back it up.
So I don't really want to debate whose farts smell worse, but they did provide a very detailed description of this research, and it is disturbing.
How so?
So, the researcher, a gastroenterologist and prolific researcher known as the King of Farts, as you know, what scientists wouldn't want to be known as the King of Farts. They talk about a study where the participants had to strap on a quote unquote flatulence collection system, which was essentially a rectal tube connected to a bag. And after they chowed down on pinto beans and took a laxative, the researchers collected their subsequent farts. Now, 2 judges were brought in to rate each fart on a scale of 0 to 6, with 6 being, quote, very offensive. They were unaware that they were smelling flatulence.
I like to imagine, Lauren, just as a person who has set up double-blinded studies, that they are sitting there, and I'd like to imagine there is this flatulence collection system, which is just a tube that's about 36 inches long, connected to somebody's butt. And they're saying, now, we're not going to tell you what you're smelling, and surely this is not going to remind you of anything you've smelled in your life, but we want to make this completely blinded, so don't get any ideas about what you're smelling here. But yeah, that is...
I think they removed the tube from the butt and bag before they handed it to the sniff test judges.
But that's not, first of all, that's not as funny a visual to think about. Trying to do some theater of the mind here. But second of all, I tell you what, you put a nasty fart in a jar and bring it to me, I feel like I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to have this rapid sequence of thoughts. Number 1, I know what this is. Number 2, my God, this is awful. Number 3, why did you do this? Why would you bring this to me?
Do you remember when we talked about old people smell and if eating mushrooms could attenuate this, and how they had a experiment where they were having people smell bags of clothes?
Yeah.
This is so much more offensive than that.
Yeah.
And that made me a bit, I was put off by that other experiment. This is diabolical. And the judges were compensated.
I am hereby calling for a full-on investigation from the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, whoever does the accreditation process for Johns Hopkins. I need everyone, the Department of Education, to figure out what is going on here and why have we been funding this gentleman, with all due respect, putting farts in a jar and subjecting people to this treachery.
Yeah.
So I guess the take-home point was that women are smelly.
They go on to say that, women are smellier, but it's it's probably protective against Alzheimer's disease, and they cite some rodent studies. Which is, the least surprising thing I've read all week.
Yeah. I feel like that is kind of how like all these articles kind of they all devolve into something about Alzheimer's or Parkinson's based on a mouse model. It doesn't really matter how you get there. And yet every article gets there. Every article is, speaks very confidently, and we get 0 inches closer toward actually having like better treatments or better prevention.
Yeah, I don't like this study. I don't like the amount of resources that went into this study because there was a mass spec analysis involved.
Yeah.
And I just think it also had nothing to do with Alzheimer's, so we're really stretching here to connect the fart study and the fart headline to an overall hot topic in health. But what else would you expect from the New York Post?
Yeah, and then you have the tidbits like a 2005 study found that heterosexual men were the least bothered if others could hear or smell their toots, while heterosexual women were the most self-conscious. So if you are wondering, is there research on that? Here you go, folks, the hard-hitting stuff via the New York Post and Front Page Fitness. All right, Lauren, let's move on. We've got one here. Again, you just went on a rampage with the New York Post this week. Good for you. It says, doctor warns against viral trend for fighting a stuffy nose. So, okay, what is this viral trend, first and foremost?
Well, can you guess?
It's probably Afrin?
No.
Okay, what is it?
Shoving garlic cloves up your nose.
Okay. There you go. That is a worse idea than Afrin, but I've made my thoughts about Afrin known. By the way, somebody kind of dunked on me about that take because I think I said recklessly, without information, that there should be some kind of a warning on Afrin. Apparently there is. I just didn't see it. So there we go. My bad, folks. But okay, so people decided that they wanted to put garlic literally in their nose, like up their nose.
Yeah, so if you scroll through the article, you'll see screen grabs from TikTok where these people have like one clove shoved up each nostril.
Yeah.
And like I get it that we have to do things on social media for attention. There has been a lot of the things that some of which have gone terribly wrong for safety reasons. But this one, it is just bizarre.
Yeah, so I guess
especially when we have like good solutions for nasal congestion.
Yeah, there's a little caption here. It says, when they pull the garlic out, it's often followed by a trail of snot, which is not a pleasant sentence at all. But it also says...
oh, ew, there's a video of that. It's a lot of snot.
Okay, I have not seen the video. I'm going to opt out of that experience. But it says down here, inhaling steam from a hot shower or a bowl of water can also help loosen mucus and reduce inflammation. So a little bit easier. They said placing a warm, damp cloth over the nose and forehead may soothe discomfort. And adding a humidifier to your room can keep nasal passages from drying out. So there's all sorts of, talk about all the nasal sprays and decongestants you can use, all the conventional stuff. But sometimes people want to go with they want to go rogue and put a little garlic up their nose. Here's what I will say, Lauren, when I was reading about this inhaling steam from a hot shower, did you ever hear about popcorn lung?
No.
Let me see if the New York Post ever talked about popcorn lung. I feel like that would be right up their alley. Let's see here. Popcorn ruined my lungs. Suit. They weren't as creative in 2010 with their headlines. So I'm glad that they've kind of boosted that part of their operation. But yeah, so basically, Lauren, I remember back around like 2010-ish to like 2012-ish, somewhere around there, people were getting all worked up and bent out of shape about something called popcorn lung. And so basically the idea was like, when you make a bag of popcorn in the microwave, like microwavable, and then you open it up and all the steam comes out of the bag and there's that fresh popcorn smell. Apparently some people were opening up the bag and go getting a giant whiff of that fresh popcorn steam. And apparently there was all sorts of various irritant chemicals that were being escaping the bags at one point in time. And people were getting like, now I'm going to stop the laughter portion. People were getting like actual like lung infections and like serious stuff. Like this article from 2012 said this person who had been doing this routinely between 1991 and 2007 is likely to require a lung transplant from popcorn lung. So now I am going off of vague memory and a 2010 article from the New York Post. So don't take this to heart, folks. But I just remember the scandal and all the news surrounding popcorn lung. So whenever I hear about inhaling steam, I always encourage people, make sure it's the good stuff, the clean steam, not the dirty stuff.
I just have to wonder if any of these people were smokers and they were like, I have no idea what it could be. Like, it's just like, once a week I'm making popcorn, we're watching a movie, and I just smell the buttery goodness, and that must be it.
Yeah, well, the reason it really hit me was this was back when I was in my peak fitness era. Like, this was undergrad when everyone's like into fitness when they're 19, right? So So I was one of my snacks for the day, my big treats was I would do some air popped popcorn, and I would mix in a bag of the good buttery kind of like microwavable kind of movie theater type popcorn. And as I was diving into a bowl of popcorn, I saw all these headlines about popcorn lung, and I said, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." Because I may have been one to indulge and enjoy some of that steamy goodness.
Snorting?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, popcorn is it's not just a flavor experience. You got to bring in the steam, feel the heat on your face, smell the smells. So be careful out there.
Huh.
Is that something you'd ever do, Lauren? Have you ever taken in a big lungful of popcorn fumes?
I just have to feel like if this to even if there are some chemicals, which I'm sure there are in that bag, if it to inhale a sufficient quantity to develop a lung issue, it sounds like you would have to be constantly sniffing, because once you open the bag, the steam comes out and then that's it. You have a very limited window of opportunity in which to inhale, assuming you aren't making bag after bag after bag of popcorn.
Oh dear, Lauren, things are getting serious. Now, I know that you like to thumb your nose at the New York Post and you like to act like it's not a reputable publication. But what if I told you, Lauren, that right now on my computer screen is an article from the New York Times. Not me misreading it, not me misremembering. It says, doctor links a man's illness to a microwave popcorn habit. A fondness for microwave butter popcorn may have led a 53-year-old Colorado man to develop a serious lung condition that until now has only been found in people working in popcorn plants. So in 2007, this was a bombshell story. The epicenter of this massive epidemic was the popcorn facilities, and now it was the humble users like me who were ultimately suffering the ill effects from getting a good whiff of that popcorn for about 20 years. So Lauren, there's a lot of stuff to get into with this particular controversy, but this is where I began my premise, my kind of long-standing assumption, Lauren. I normally try to be very evidence-based, and I don't rush to judgment, but I think the great popcorn lung scare of the late 2000s is what really made me believe I will permanently distrust anything that involves inhaling chemicals. I do not believe that lungs are really well built for dealing with all sorts of nonsense. And so when vaping got really big and people were like, what are you doing? It's like, well, it's got nicotine and heated plastic and it tastes like tropical fruit punch. I'm like, I don't know if your lung is really ready to accommodate all that. So I generally, my rule of thumb is when it comes to inhaling weird stuff, especially things that's been superheated, I generally shy away from it unless absolutely necessary.
I think that's a reasonable policy.
Yep, I'm sticking with it. All right, Lauren, let's see here. We have some listener emails. So we've got, first we got one from Kiara, Kiara says, absolutely love the podcast. She said, saw this TikTok, and I think it's highly relevant to the two of us, Lauren. The creator mixes White Monster with a zero sugar Baja Blast and says it's a 10 out of 10. Between Eric's love for Baja Blast and Lauren's history with monster drinks, I think it could be the official drink for the pod. Would love to hear your thoughts. Lauren, I insist on going first because having enjoyed a lot of White Monster energy drinks and a lot of zero sugar Baja Blast, I am certain that that is going to be an excellent combination.
All right.
100%. Have you still not tried Baja Blast?
I don't think they sell it here.
Okay, Lauren.
I could be wrong. I don't spend very much time in the soda aisle.
Well, first of all, you're virtue signaling your lack of taste, which is ultimately self-defeating. But Lauren, I was so the only thing in life that I enjoy is college football. And
yes,
in the morning when I am like walking or jogging, I play a college football video game on PlayStation 5. And I was playing a game the other day and I noticed that there was a Mountain Dew advertisement in the stadium I was playing in, and I believe it was actually a Baja Blast advertisement. And it was one of those things where I was like, how do they know this about me? Because I don't
targeted marketing.
It has to be targeted, but they couldn't possibly know this. But in any case,
we talk about it every week.
Yeah, but anyway,
your phone is listening.
Yeah. Anyway, Baja Blast is having a huge cultural moment. You're sitting it out for no reason. You have no one to blame but yourself. And Helms is a straight shooter. He's not one to BS when it comes to diet soda. He tried it and said, wow, this is a really, really special beverage. So I actually, if we ever record like not in the evening, I might actually give this a shot on the air for the first time because I'm very certain this would be excellent. But okay.
All right.
Moving forward, we got one from Ruby, who would prefer to be called Mike, not Michael. So Ruby, a.k.a. Mike. I guess we'll call her Michael, right?
We only call people Michael, yeah.
So Michael says, my friend told me that you need 30 plants per week, but it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. You need 30 plants per week, but it doesn't matter how big each dose of plant is. So for example, a chia seed would count as one of your 30 plants. She's just said that your gut biome needs 30 different plants per week. And so then there's a couple links here that I believe you provided, Lauren. So, I'm sorry, I chuckled just at the concept of like, how many plants did you get? Completely irrespective of dose, as a nutritional marker. But, why don't you weigh in on this since you did the heavy lifting?
So I think this comes from this app called Zoe. And they have an app and a gut health test and some supplements that I'm sure are totally excellent. And they have an article on their blog that's why should you eat 30 plants a week. And so they seem to be pushing this number. And I mean, it's basically just promoting food diversity. But they're saying it's not just about fruits and vegetables, like an oil counts as a plant, nuts and seeds count as plants. So there's a lot of debate about what counts as one of your 30, but it does seem to be the case that you can have like one strawberry and one almond and one piece of broccoli, and like as we add those together, like it's not about how the dose of micronutrients that we're getting. It's not about the amount of fiber that we're getting. It's just about the sheer quantity of things that fall under this category of plant, which is a very broad category as defined by Zoe.
Right. And so it looks like you found a research article that perhaps is adjacent to all this stuff. Do you think it is directly linked, or is just kind of what this kind of app is kind of drawing from?
Well, the article is much more measured, shocker, but
No.
it basically looks at many studies and then talks about this concept of food diversity and how it's it's possible that variety is important. But the way that it's been looked at in research is such that it's very difficult to kind of group the data together, because people in some cases only look at fruits and vegetables, and in other cases have this much broader definition of plant. And that could include grains as well as nuts and seeds and oils. And so and then given that there isn't a clear definition of what it is, then it's very difficult to say, and what is variety versus not enough variety? Where does that cutoff happen? And then what outcome measures are we looking at? So it definitely seems like this whole 30 per week thing is extremely arbitrary, but there might be something to be said for getting some variety and not just sticking with and I think that's probably true just if we think diet in general. Some variety in your diet is probably a good call, but we don't have solid data to say here's the number, and this is how you would split it up, or why we're putting an arbitrary marker of a week on it instead of every other day or throughout the day.
So Lauren, random question. So I have a buddy who brews beer, and so you're going to put a bunch of grains into that. So let's say I decided in my grain mash here, I'm going to put in wheat, rye, oats, corn, and rice, and barley, which are all used in the beer brewing process. Do you feel like I can hack my way to like an easy 30? I mean, right there, what are we talking, like 7 plants just by having a beer?
Well, the review paper argues that coffee and tea should be included as well. So,
oh my God. Yeah. Honestly, this is my favorite kind of health hack, because I feel like I can completely cheat the system and just end up drinking beer, bourbon, and coffee and feel like I'm like halfway there.
There you go.
No, I think it's interesting because like the article itself says, let's see here. Yeah, methods of measurement of both plant-based food intake and diversity varied greatly between studies. Like it says here, there is a need for robust definition and standardized assessment tools for plant-based food diversity. So when you go into the actual like scientific articles, they talk about how like, yeah, we can look at diversity as like a gross outcome or gross characteristics, but we really need to figure out how we're actually going to standardize the way we quantify and measure this, because obviously there's a huge difference between having a fruit salad with 1 blueberry, 1 grape, 1 strawberry. You could imagine having a small plate and saying, well, there's my 30 plants. And it was just like a serving and a half of fruit salad. And it's like, it's probably not getting the most bang for your buck from a nutritional perspective. But hey, why not throw an app out there that says, hey, 30 is what you need?
This is also such a we're marketing to rich people thing, because, you think, even when you look at access to diverse foods, there's definitely a socioeconomic element of that, a location element associated with that. And so once we throw in, real world people with these real constraints, then it's not going to be as simple as, oh yeah, we're just going to have an abundance of food variety for this whole family with limited resources.
Yeah, the thing that really bothered me about that topic is at some point along the line, I don't remember when, where, or why, they started throwing an extra word in. Like all the nutrition people, who I very strongly distrust, they would throw in this extra word where all of a sudden they'd say, hey, you got to get your fruits and vegetables in. And then out of nowhere, they start saying, you got to make sure you're getting fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. I don't know what marketing lobby decided to throw that in there, but that to me was such a
organic, fresh and organic.
Well, yeah, I know where that's coming from, but the fresh one for me was really annoying because, again, like you said, there are plenty of folks who say like, okay, for me to have access to fruits and vegetables and stuff, like I can, it's a little logistically more easy for me to swing, frozen or canned or whatever. But the emphasis on having fresh, first of all, I think turned off a lot of people because they're like, yeah, that's not going to work. I buy lettuce and it's rotten before I get home from the grocery store. Or, the grocery stores near me just don't have a lot of selection and, you know, all these other issues. But more to the point, I mean, I would make a nutritional argument that it obviously varies from among different types of produce. Some types of produce, you're not going to like freezing them because of what happens to the texture or the composition. But by and large, frozen is kind of the way to go with produce. Like I almost exclusively get frozen produce because it retains a lot of its micronutrient content even better sometimes than fresh products that sit on the shelf and actually lose some of that content. Also, the best thing about vegetables is eating them. So like if you get a huge, like I'm sure we've all been there, right? On Sunday, you're grocery shopping and you're like, man, this is going to be my healthy week. And you get all these fresh vegetables. And then, you know, 7 days pass, you're looking at your refrigerator, you're like, oh God, like all of that is rotten. I certainly don't want it anymore. And you end up having this kind of conveyor belt of grocery store to refrigerator to trash. That is not making you healthier. But when you actually buy it frozen, then you can say, hey, that is there for when I'm ready to make those small decisions day in and day out of saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and thaw out some veggies and make it happen. So I'm a huge advocate of frozen veggies. Canned veggies, I'm okay with. I think the texture is kind of gross sometimes, so I'm not a huge canned veggies person. But frozen veggies, 100% all the time.
I think the fresh only advice also kind of ignores the really obvious factor that when you eat a vegetable raw versus you cook it and eat it, you're already getting differences there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
not that you know, one is excellent and one is trash, but those differences exist. So if we're going to say there are differences between frozen and fresh, then sure, but it's not necessarily, oh, and therefore this is better, and that is not worth doing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Lauren, we got one more here from Andy, who we'll call Michael. Why not? What are y'all's thoughts on wearables like Oura Rings or the sleep and recovery tracking bracelets? You mind if I take a crack at this first? This is a bit of a hobby horse of mine.
Go ahead.
All right. So
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I actually did a little bit of research here at Duke on some a novel wearable technology, which I will not say anything more about because it's top secret. But wearables, I find them interesting. I find them promising, but you have to have the kind of distinction between what they could be and what they are. You know, and I think what they could be is really exciting. What they are is a little less exciting. And in many cases, so like when we look at the different wearables that are out there, are they good at tracking step count? Yeah, they're actually like pretty good. Are they good at tracking heart rate? Some of them are pretty good for that as well. Like step count and heart rate, depending on the device, you know, there are some ones that are really good out there. But then you'll look at these wearables and they start going into this other stuff where they're like, we're going to, you know, tell you how many calories you burnt today. Absolutely not. Not a chance. The ones that will tell you, more pertinent to the question here, things about sleep and recovery tracking, I get really skeptical about. You know, the recovery one is, even if it's measuring with a high level of precision, it's quantifying metrics that aren't so straightforward as green light, red light, you're good or don't go, right? So the recovery stuff I think is super hit or miss, mostly miss. And when it comes to sleep, you know, I've had this conversation with someone I care about who they were having sleep issues and they were thinking, oh, maybe I'll start tracking my sleep. And I said, if you're going to go that route, please promise me one thing. And that is every day before you check your app to see how it believes you slept, you document your subjective sleep quality. How rested do you feel? How do you rate your last night's sleep on 1 to 10? What do you think was your sleep duration based on when you went to bed and when you woke up? Actually call your shots first before you get biased by what the app is going to tell you, because that was my whole thing is, you know, an app can tell me whatever it wants about my sleep, but at the end of the day, like Lauren, if you're just absolutely exhausted and you know you were tossing and turning all night and you wake up and your app says, oh yeah, you had a good night of sleep, what is that doing for you? Like at the end of the day, you are the best arbiter or judge of your restfulness and the quality of sleep that you're getting day in and day out. And so I get really nervous about leaning too much on wearables for stuff like that, like recovery or sleep. I think they're, like I said, fine for step counts and heart rate, and there's utility for that data. I think there's promise that they can get way better at just about everything that they measure. But for now, I tend to shy away. And we kind of hinted at this in our last episode, Lauren, but I just don't really like tracking all that many things about myself. I find it to be some people find it very liberating to have all their numbers. I actually hate it. I like to live a bit freer than that and say, like, I'm going to focus more on my behaviors and just kind of the processes, and I'm going to let the numbers fall where they lie. But what do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I think it's good advice I mean, the apps should actually incorporate that, frankly. It would be good for their tech, and good for the end user. If you woke up in the morning and you said, like, what is my subjective readiness to train or how recovered I feel? But anyway, I think most of us know when we had a poor night's sleep, and we can often attribute the why. So in some ways, I don't find that particularly useful.
I was going to say, the reason I kind of chuckled, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was just thinking, like, you don't find a lot of people with severe sleep issues who are surprised when they're diagnosed. Like, you have a terrible sleep condition. No way. What? It's like, yeah, I've been exhausted for 9 months. Yeah, that's how it works.
I also think sometimes the tech, although it's supposed to make it easier and flashier and techier, like the throne, for example, I think sometimes it can take something that actually doesn't take a lot of time or effort or technology and try to make it something way bigger than it is, and it ends up just kind of screwing things up. Like when I was designing one of my menstrual cycle, like ovulation tracking studies, I got this company to donate these wrist wearables that they were like, it totally tracks ovulation. You just wear it at night and you sync it to the app. And I'm like, okay, I will test it on myself, and see how that goes, and before I would consider actually using it in the research setting. And it was awful because as soon as it's trying to track heart rate and skin temperature, but as soon as the sensor shifts, then it like disconnects briefly and then has to reconnect, and it just is not good for that. And we have another way of tracking, which is a very easy urine test strip that you pee on and then look at a couple of minutes later. And I'm like, when we have that and it works quite well, why are we looking to this complicated bracelet that you have to wear all the time and worry about whether it's connecting properly to your phone? So I wanted to like it for research purposes. I would have had to deal with fewer urine tests and pictures of ovulation strips and bloods and all of that if it were as good as it said it was, but it was not. And I think sometimes when we put the cart before the horse and we get overly excited about some of the tech or the newer metrics that they claim to offer, then we just end up in kind of data overload. It's interesting for like 2 weeks and then we just don't do anything with it.
Yeah, some of these wearables, especially when you start getting into like very niche things that they purport to be tracking, I feel like we're just working with like the modern day mood ring, whereas, and Lauren, and that's my question. Did you have a mood ring back in the day? Did you ever acquire one?
No, it just wasn't my aesthetic.
Yeah, but it was a big part of like 1990s kid culture.
I'm sure it would have said, "You're always in a bad mood."
Yeah, I'm looking at the mood ring color chart right now. Yours would have probably always been between red and orange. Red was intense and angry. Orange was aggressive, irritated, and impatient.
I guess, like, let me think. If I said I'm putting this amazing new tracker in your bedroom and it's going to sync to you and your wife's phones, and every morning you're going to wake up and it's going to tell you how good your marriage is on a scale of 0 to 10.
Well, that sure would
Would
be
that be
interesting.
helpful?
I don't believe so, especially because, like I said, we already have mood ring technology. And that
Right.
basically, the reason, a lot of people don't know this, the reason that mood rings were invented was for spouses. So that you're each wearing them so you can visibly display to the other, right now I'm in orange, so, maybe we should delay that conversation until I'm back to green,
Right.
or back to blue, God willing. But yeah, I think I might be, I didn't realize there was a black. Black is stressed, overworked, and tired. I think, I don't want to point any fingers, but I might be pointing them at
I don't think
myself.
you need a mood ring to know that. Speaking for you.
I just,
specifically.
I just remember back in the day, it was like every time you went to some kind of like place where you would play games, win tickets, and then exchange those tickets for various knickknacks, always you'd have a mood ring selection. You'd have mood rings,
Mm.
bouncy balls, the little finger traps where you get your index fingers
yeah.
stuck together. Those were scary. This is all it's rushing back to me because one of my first jobs, aside from being a 90s kid and experiencing this firsthand, one of my jobs when I was like 14 was working at a laser tag facility, and I was the guy that took all those tickets and then distributed all of these knickknacks. And
Nice.
that really scarred me. That, like, in terms of like first job experiences, that was pretty brutal because I'm a low energy guy, and a laser tag facility is like 7-year-old kids at birthday parties hyped up on Mountain Dew. No offense, Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
But they're just eating cake and pizza and Mountain Dew and bouncing off the walls, and there's all these strobe lights and everything. Really not a good experience. But then, Lauren, the redemption arc of that story is eventually I got a job as a janitor in a gym. And that is the best job for a high schooler. I'm just standing there leaning on my mop and just saying, "Hey, Tony, what we benching these days? Good to see you." Just everybody that came in, just kind of making small talk. How's the bench press feeling? And that was pretty much it. It was a lovely, lovely job.
The laser tag gift exchange room is the youth equivalent of the drunk bachelorette optional cycling party bus in Nashville.
Yeah. Which it was not fun, but it also sucked because my brother got me the job. He really put his neck out on the line to the extent that like a 17-year-old kid can put their neck on the line in the workplace, and I let him down, and it did not last long. So we had a bad streak there where he got me a couple of jobs, and then I just flaked on both of them, and so he was like, "Yeah, I do not recommend you anymore." It's just hard to hear from family, Lauren, but completely deserved and well earned.
Well, you shouldn't give anyone a reference that you don't truly believe in.
Yeah. So that one hurt, but I could not dispute the veracity of the issue. All right, Lauren, I think that does it for this episode. Anything else you want to say to the very good people?
Send us an email, frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com, and comment, subscribe to our YouTube. You can watch us live. Not today, but usually on Monday nights.
Yep, usually Monday nights at about 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That does it for this week, but we are already chomping at the bit to get back into our live format next Monday at 5:30 p.m. We hope to see you there. Everybody take care.